Hey, warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. 3 straight days of a conference preview podcast. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? We are getting these conference previews all taken care of, and we're getting it set for the upcoming season. We are doing the HoriZone League today, and we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a man that joined me for the HoriZone League preview podcast last year, Bob McDonald. He's over at HoriZone Roundtable. Hopefully you got that correct, and I know that he's doing a tremendous job gauging this great conference that we all know and love, one that is very near and dear to my heart. You've got 2 teams from the great state of Wisconsin out there. I'm a man that was born and raised in the great state of Wisconsin, had a lot of friends from high school that went to UW Green Bay, went to UW Milwaukee, so this one is always a fun one for me. We're going to be chatting with him about all the roster changes that we've seen in the offseason. Will Doug Gottlieb actually be a halfway decent coach this year? Answer is probably not, but we're going to be discussing that and so much more. In the first segment here, we're going to be taking a look at the betting trends of the HoriZone League and just sort of the styles of play that we've got in this conference as well. And then in the final segment, I'm going to give you guys my projector or finish for the HoriZone League. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you've got one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions, and those, if I do get those on a day in which I do a conference preview like today, those get polished up the next day, but everything, it is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost, making sure that bettors are able to access their funds 24/7, 365. Every single gambling-related transaction does get approved by EdgeBoost, and when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That gets you a $1 for $1 match on your first deposit up to $25. And now let's get down to business, and let's take a look at a HoriZone League that feels like it's just fallen off over the last few years in general. You don't have a lot of super duper up-tempo teams anymore as well. UW Milwaukee was one of your faster teams, 118th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Green Bay was very much a even Steven, 157th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I know that Wright State in the Scott Nagy heyday, they were really going up-tempo, down to about 179th with the new coaching regime last season in terms of total possessions per game. And Oakland, just a complete 180. You never know what you're going to get out of Greg Kampe, 298th in the country in terms of total possessions per game for them last season. So you had a lot of interesting teams for Fort Wayne and IU Indy. These 2 teams were very interesting out there in the great state of Indiana. IU Indy, who they had a coaching change midstream, 305th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and midstream, I mean, they had their coaching change happen in like late April, early May, so they're going to be one of those teams that is going to be very much worth looking at. Purdue Fort Wayne was really your main team in terms of going up tempo in this conference. They were 67th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so they were one of those teams that was very much looking to run it and gun it, and as has been a hallmark of this conference, not a lot of defense. I will say Youngstown State as well, just to give them a little bit of shout out, 77th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but this is a conference where the defense typically goes to die a little bit more, and you did have some very, shall we say, shaky defenses last year. IU Indy, 362nd in all of college basketball in terms of total points allowed on a per possession basis. 353rd was Green Bay in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Wright State, 330th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So you had a lot of teams that they were taking it on the chin, to say the least. Now, you did have a few teams be able to rise up and play some relatively solid defense. For Fort Wayne, they were a top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, that did lead to them, in turn, also giving up some wide-open three-point looks, but that said, 221st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For this conference, that's actually not too bad. Oakland was 258th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Yet another relatively brutal year for them, but Youngstown State was really the big surprise, in my opinion. Top 100 team, despite the coaching change from Jared Calhoun in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so did a nice job being able to go out there, get the job done. And then for Northern Kentucky, another team that generated quite a few turnovers, but an all-or-nothing team, 188th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per-possession basis, and you did have a lot of teams in general that really just struggle from three-point range. Oakland is always a team that prides themselves on their three-point shooting, and they were one of the most anemic three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball last season. For Oakland, in terms of their overall three-point shooting percentage, they clocked in at the end of the year right around 330th. They shot 30.6% from three-point range. Now, Youngstown State, they were right there, 302nd in the country. They shot 31.3% from three-point range, a little bit less than Savory there, and it was a divide between the haves and have-nots. Like Wright State was number 8 in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage at 38.6%. They really had things rocking and rolling. IU Indy last year was 38th. They shot 36.8% from three-point range. Fort Wayne was a team that was able to get things lit up from three-point range as well, 29th in the country, 37.1%. So either you hit a bunch of threes or you really didn't hit a lot of threes last season. UW-Milwaukee, they were 272nd. They shot about 31.9% from three-point range. In Green Bay, they shot 33%, but they did everything else wrong. So that was not necessarily too tremendous. And when it comes to the Horizon League, it just really was a struggle for this team to be able to cover games outside the conference, as Robert Morris, who represented the conference in the NCAA tournament, and a team that really I have not talked about too much. They were a top 100 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Very rock solid team. How about them? 26-8 against the spread. Everything that I was talking about in terms of deficiencies, in terms of things that teams within the conference did not do, they were able to do very well on. I mean, that was the second best against the spread record in all of college basketball. Only Florida A&M did a better job of being able to cover than Robert Morris. Robert Morris going to be a little bit of a new look team this season, but man, were they able to get the job done. And then you did have Cleveland State be pretty rock solid as well. Another team that forced a lot of turnovers, didn't necessarily shoot it well from three, but 19-14-1 against the spread last season. Purdue Fort Wayne was 17-13 against the spread. Detroit 17-14 against the spread. IU Indy was 16-14, 17-15-1 against the spread for Oakland as well. And then Northern Kentucky was really bringing up the rear, 12-20 against the spread. And UW Green Bay actually surged towards back half of the season, 13-17-2 against the spread. Though it was a very brutal non-conference slate for them. If you look at teams and what they were able to do in the non-con, the Horizon League actually surprised quite a bit. You only had 3 teams cover less than 50% of their games in the non-conference portion of the season. UW Green Bay was one of them, 5-6 against the spread in non-con play. IU Indy 4-5 against the spread, and Northern Kentucky 4-6 against the spread. Well, you had 5 different teams cover at least 60% of their games against the spread in non-conference play. Fort Wayne, chief among them, 7-2 against the spread. Robert Morris went 8-3 against the spread, and then a 7-3 mark for Detroit. Wright State 6-3 against the spread, and Oakland went 6-4 against the spread. So I mean, a lot of credit where it is due for a conference that didn't have a lot of defense, to say the least. You had a much slower style of play for a lot of these teams, and I think that was very much to the benefit of them. And I mean, these teams, many of them did a solid job in the role of a favorite. Northern Kentucky, along with UW-Milwaukee, both went 9-11 against the spread in the role of a favorite. Oakland 6-8-1 against the spread, and UW Green Bay, shock, surprise, 2-5 against the spread. But I mean, Fort Wayne 13-8 against the spread as an underdog. Cleveland State 11-7-1 against the spread as a dog. Wright State 9-7 against the spread. Robert Morris 13-6 against the spread as an underdog. So these teams were able to come through, and you don't have a ton of travel when it comes to the Horizon League as well. And I mean, that was reflected in the fact that a lot of road teams had success. Wright State and Northern Kentucky were 2 of the ones that did not. You've got probably the most travel for these 2 teams. Wright State 3-11-1 against the spread on the road. Northern Kentucky 4-11 against the spread. But Robert Morris, who's based out there in Pennsylvania, so they actually do have quite a bit of travel. They went 11-3 against the spread on the road. IU Indy 10-6 against the spread on the road. Youngstown State 9-6 against the spread on the road. Cleveland State 8-6 against the spread as well. So these teams did a relatively solid job there. And then when you take a look at the totals, again, you had a lot of teams that were really giving it up from three-point range, a lot of teams that were playing some lackadaisical defense, to say the least, and that was very much reflected in the fact that you only had 3 teams play more unders than overs. Northern Kentucky, 17 unders to 15 overs. Youngstown State, 17 unders, 14 overs, and a push. And Cleveland State, 21 unders to 13 overs. And then with IU Indy, they were your top over team, 19 overs to 11 unders. Robert Morris, 20 overs, 14 unders, 17 overs to 13 unders for Purdue Fort Wayne. Wright State, 17 overs, 14 unders. And then you had UW Green Bay, Oakland, Milwaukee, and Detroit either be 1 game above the Mendoza line with regards to the over, or be right at 500 with regards to the over. And I use the Mendoza line 1 game above, shall we say, 50-50 with regards to the over. The Mendoza line, that is hitting 200 or better with regards to baseball. So we are getting things all confused there. So do forgive me there. But that said, when it came to conference games, you did see what I felt like was a pretty good rise with regards to the over rate, as only 2 teams played more unders than overs in conference play. For UW-Milwaukee, 10 overs to 11 unders. Cleveland State, 9 overs to 13 unders, with IU Indy really playing a lot of overs in conference play. 14 overs to 7 unders. Fort Wayne, 12 overs to 9 unders. Robert Morris, 13 overs to 10 unders. Detroit 11 overs, 9 unders, and a push. And then you had all these teams either go 12-11 or 12-10 to the over. Wright State, Youngstown State, Northern Kentucky, Green Bay, Oakland. So, I do think that it's a very interesting conference. You've got a lot of, shall we say, spotty defense, but at the same time, you've got a lot of teams as well that are starting to play a little bit more slow, a little bit more controlled, and we do have a few coaching changes in this conference. So, we're going to be talking about that with Bob McDonald, who does great work with the HoriZone Roundtable. He does a great job being able to take a look at all things out there in the Horizon League, and he joins me next right here on Coach Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beats and Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beats and Family Podcast. This is the Horizon League Conference Preview Edition, and just like on the podcast last year when I previewed the Horizon League, we've got this man aboard. It is Bob McDonald, who does great work over at the HoriZone Roundtable, taking a look at all things out there in one of our favorite mid-major conferences out there in the Midwest. I know that he does a tremendous job all 12 months out of the year taking a look at this tremendous conference. I know that we've got ourselves a lot of excitement with regards to the Horizon League. Bob keeps his finger on the pulse of it all, and you're able to follow the HoriZone Roundtable on Twitter/X at HoriZonert. And Bob, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, thank you once again for having me another year. Appreciate the Midwest love, as always.
Absolutely. Being a man from the great state of Wisconsin, I always need to do so because you're one of the few people I joined this podcast that might know where Oshkosh, Wisconsin is. So that makes
you have no idea, yes. And if I didn't, there's a couple of Wisconsin area fans who would have some words with me if I didn't.
Absolutely. So that brings joy to my heart, and it brings joy to my heart to be able to look at this conference. And first things first, let's look at IU Indy because they had the most, shall we say, change in the offseason because Paul Carasso, he gets canned in the month of May. Ben Howlett, who was a really good Division II coach over at West Liberty, he gets a job now. But I think the question becomes, who's all going to be on the roster? Because I'm seeing Corey Boston, a non-Division I transfer from Concord. He should be relatively solid. With West Liberty, his team and Howlett's team was averaging over 100 points per game last season. So there should be a lot of good, clean family fun with regards to IU Indy games this year.
It's basically all D2 guys. Ben Howlett brought over a bunch of his guys from West Liberty. Kyle D'Agostino, who was the leading scorer last year, is with him at IU Indy now. So is JP Dragus, Ben Woodward, Cameron Tinsley. All those guys are in. But in addition, you mentioned Corey Boston, a lot of D2 guys. But there's actually a couple of guys who had signed to IU Indy beforehand, before the Paul Corsaro ouster, if you will. Jackson Edwards and Micah Davis, D1 guys. And it's amazing how quickly Ben Howlett got this team together. I think he did it in like 3 weeks after he got hired. And they're already practicing and everything. They've even got their schedule out. They're still the first Horizon League team to get their conference schedule out. So whether the system, as Ben Howlett calls it, translates to the D1 game, that's going to be dependent upon how successful IU Indy is.
Yeah, that is going to be really interesting to take a look at, to say the least, and it should be a lot of fun. And this seems going to be a lot of fun to take a look at as well, because with UW Green Bay, it looked like they were going to be getting a nice transfer in Sheldon Williams-Dryden. He decided to go back to West Georgia. That was a big giant blow for this team. They do bring back Marcus Hall, who really surged towards back half of the season last year. Matt Gorecki, along with Preston Rudinger. These two guys are going to be back from a season ago. So they bring back a few guys from a year ago. They bring in some junior college guys as well. But losing out on Williams-Dryden, I think is going to be really rough for Green Bay, because I thought that he was going to be a focal point of that offense.
I really do think that Green Bay, and people think I'm crazy, they're going to do a lot better than they did last year. Last year was a train wreck. I think that's pretty much beyond dispute. But to your point, they've got a really good core. Marcus Hall, I think he's an all-conference player, as is Preston Rudinger. The one JUCO transfer that is of great intrigue to me is Ramel Bethea. This guy's got an amazing story. He's like 28 years old. He was in the Navy. He was on an aircraft carrier, and he didn't even play basketball in high school. He started playing in the Navy and got really good and ended up going to a JUCO, and now he's at Green Bay. A lot of length on that guy, too, and they absolutely need that, because last year, whatever length I thought they were going to have, whatever size I thought they were going to have, just fizzled out spectacularly, kind of like everything else. But I think they're in a lot better situation this year than they were last year.
Yep, I do think so as well. And I take a look at this team of being one of intrigue as well, because with Wright State, they just absolutely bombed it from 3-point range last season. But defense, as is typically the case with Wright State, left a little bit of something to be desired. But I am Brian Entaminu, who's going to be coming in. I think that that's going to be able to help them out. Coming in from Merrimack, a defense that is very, very hard to be able to prepare for. They bring back Logan Woods, who was rock solid in that backcourt as a little bit of a combo guard as well. I recognize that Wright State loses a lot of their guys from a season ago, but I think that what they brought in via the transfer portal is pretty solid. And I think that this Wright State team is setting up to be a little bit better defensively and still pretty strong on offense, too.
Well, I got some bad news for you. Keaton Norris transferred. He's playing with his brother now.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, and that's going to be a big problem for them because I am not very high. I'm not very high on Wright State, and Wright State fans know this, and they're not happy with me about it. It's kind of because they have such a young team. I mean, you talk about Logan Woods coming back. I think Solomon Callahan is a good piece. So is Andre Holden. But those guys are, sophomores. You talk about Atumnu. He's a decent piece. Also, Michael Amari Bay is going to be back as well. But a lot of the guys that are coming in who don't really have a lot of experience, and compared to the teams that are a lot more experienced in this league, going into the season, it's going to be a really high learning curve for Clint Sargent's crew.
yep, it is going to be a very high learning curve as Bob McDonald, who does such great work over at HoriZone Roundtable, he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And this one I think is interesting because we saw another coaching change in the offseason in the Horizon League. Daniel Robinson, he heads on over to North Texas. So that means that Rob Summers, he takes over after he was a assistant at Cleveland State. And I know that he did a little bit of work with Dennis Gates, who's currently at Missouri. So, I mean, obviously there's some good ties there. This is going to be very much a new look team, but I think that bringing in Josiah Harris to be able to elevate that backcourt is going to be rock solid. I believe Ice Emery, who comes over from West Carolina, is going to be able to give you a bit of something as well. And hey, you've got some transfers within the Horizon League with Foster Wonders from UW Green Bay coming in as well. I think that chemistry is going to be a little bit of an issue, but I think that Rob Summers was a pretty solid hire, and I do think that for Cleveland State, there might be a little bit less of a drop-off than a lot of people are anticipating.
I agree with you 100%. I also agree with you 100% on the Josiah Harris transfer. He was supposed to do a lot of good things at Akron last season. Problem, he had injury issues, so he wasn't able to do as much as he wanted to. You know how I love Horizon on Horizon crime, and we've got a perfect example here with Foster Wonders, the pride of Iron Mountain, coming over to Cleveland State. One of the things that Cleveland State is going to be doing in this season with Rob Summers that we haven't seen in the Daniel Robinson years. He was very focused on defense. It looks like we're going to see a lot more offense, and we're going to see a lot more three-pointers because you mentioned Wonders, you mentioned Ice Emery. He's got some non-D1 guys, Trey Beard and Lucas Burton. Those guys are sharpshooters. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Cleveland State as far as the offense is concerned. A little concerned about the size, but once they get into the conference play, they should be okay.
Yep, I think so as well. And when it comes to this team, they really stepped up on defense. They needed a little bit more three-point shooting last year, and hopefully they got it. That would be Youngstown Seidu. They did a nice job rising up. Obviously, Gabe Dines being out the fold, that's going to be a little bit of a hurt. But Vladimir Saldarizde, I always get that last name wrong. He comes over from UT Martin, guy that's 6'7", is able to give you some rebounding, is able to give you some three-point shooting. They retained Jason Nelson from that backcourt from a season ago. And I'm excited about Bryson Dawkins, who really had a nice season over at Houston Christian last season as well. They've got a international man of mystery in Emmanuel Zogval, who's a true 7-footer. He comes in as well. And I took a look at Youngstown State, probably not going to have as many shot blocks as they did a season ago, but still think that they're going to be solid on defense. And I think that they took a step up with regards to that outside shooting.
It's amazing that you lose a 7-footer, but you still have a 7-footer because Emmanuel Zogval, the Northern Kentucky transfer, he was a redshirt last year, going to be looked at to fill in for Gabe Dines. But don't forget, Chris Carroll is back on this team as well, and he was a big part of what Youngstown State was able to do last year. And I think that's going to be very important for them. I think the biggest thing for Ethan Faulkner, he keeps going with the if it's not broke, fix it approach. Work last year, got to the conference tournament finals. I think he's definitely well positioned to do that again this year. You mentioned Bryson Dawkins and Vlad Salarise. I'm sure one of us is pronouncing his name right, but also too Rich Rolfe as well. And he's got a couple of non-D1 guys that I think we might see a little bit of, specifically Cam Pollock and Tyler Robinette. The non-D1 guys are going to be a bit of an intrigue for me.
Yep, they are going to be a bit of intrigue, and I think that this team is intriguing as well because I do think that one of the best coaches out there in the conference is Bart Lundy. Everything that he's been able to do over at UW Milwaukee has been really good, but when you lose a guy like a Jermichael Stillwell, who is just a double-double machine for the team last season, that hurts you, along with Themis Folks, who was able to give you about 6 assists per contest. They're going to be looking to a lot of mixing and matching from this transfer portal cycle to be able to help them out, mainly Seth Hubbard, who's going to be coming in from the directional Michigan schools. You've got John Lovelace, who's able to give you a bit of something as a 6'7" combo player. And Chandler Jackson is, I really think, the main intriguing guy, the main X factor for the team. But I do feel like it might be a little bit of a step down for a Milwaukee team that was one of the best in terms of their rebounding last season. I think that Caleb Blackwell, who's going to be out there in the backcourt, has dealt with injuries, might be a little bit of an X factor for the team.
Well, unfortunately, Caleb Blackwell is not going to be on this team. Unfortunately, he transferred somewhere else, but Faison Fields is back this season, so that's a big plus for them. They also brought in another guy, DePaul transfer Sekou Kana, who could be a big factor. You mentioned Seth Hubbard, the Toledo transfer. I think he's going to be the core. He's going to be a very big part of this. But I also like the fact that they have a guy like Asa Pippa White and Aaron Franklin. And you talked a little bit about some of the other guys. Amar Aguilar, I think he's going to be the X factor on this team. And I really feel like John Lovelace Jr. is going to have that breakout year everybody was expecting from him last year in Milwaukee.
And then I think that this team had a very intriguing approach with the offseason. Get as many good junior transfer guys in as humanly possible. That's the route that Oakland went because they're bringing in a lot of non-Division I guys. Coy Thurman, he's a guy that is just an absolute athlete, for lack of a better term. He's going to be coming in. Isaac Garrett, he comes in as a 6'8", do-it-all sort of guy. And then Michael Hoagie, who he's going to be coming on over from Jacksonville State, is a guy that I like. Brody Robinson comes in as well. This team is completely unrecognizable from last year. They bring back darn near nothing from last year, but I think that Oakland did a good job with the transfer portal. The question is whether or not these pieces all mesh together.
I think the big piece for them is Brody Robinson, as you mentioned. They've been seeking out Brody Robinson for a while. He ended up going to UT Arlington last year, but they finally got him. He's finally on the Oakland roster. But never underestimate, they still have Buru Navalurua. He's coming back for his last season. And Nassim Mashur, he was kind of the guy that flew under the radar, but I think he did some really good things last year in this freshman campaign. I think he's going to definitely improve by leaps and bounds. You mentioned Michael Hogue and Isaac Garrett. I think those guys are definitely going to shore up the front court for them because they're definitely going to need it now that Alan Mukeba is gone.
Yep, absolutely. With Mukeba, he was so rock solid for them down low, but Neville Larua coming back, that is going to be a massive pickup for them. And when you're able to have a guy like that down low, that certainly fortifies you in a conference like the Horizon League. It's Bob McDonald, who does a tremendous job covering the Horizon League, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I feel like with Coach Montgomery over there at Detroit in season number 1, it was a relative success, but you do lose some of these guys that were so good for them 8 seasons ago. It looks like they should have Orlando Lovejoy back, and you've got quite a bit of returning guys from seasons ago, but it's not necessarily the main guys that you're looking to, like a Grant Groznik, for example, being out of the fold. I think that that's going to be really affecting them. And for Detroit, I think it's a good news sort of scenario that they returned so many guys from seasons ago. But the bad news is losing a guy like Groznik and having a little bit of question mark in the backcourt, I think is going to leave to this team leaving a little bit of something to be desired and having to rely upon Orlando Lovejoy for a little bit of everything.
I think they got a little bit of preparation for Grant Godric transferring because he didn't play a lot near the end of the season. So, but there was a lot of other issues with Detroit Mercy because the injury bug really killed them on a lot of different levels. They didn't have Mac Mansell was out for a good portion of the season. Jared Lowry was also out for the season early on, but Larry's back, as is Orlando Lovejoy and Legend Jeter. Not just them, but the fact that there was so many opportunities for the freshmen to come in. You had TJ Nadeau, Nate Johnson, and Ryan Callambay. They get a year under their belt, and year kind of trial by fire for them. So I think in that regards, I think they're a lot better positioned than probably a lot of people would think. The other thing too, and this is important, is that I think they're going to bring in, I think their freshmen are going to come in too, because they did it last year. I feel like Coach Monty's going to do the same thing. Tyler Spratt, he was a redshirt at Cleveland State. He transferred after Daniel Robinson took the North Texas gig. He's a Detroit native. He's going to be in the mix, as well as Lance Stone. Lance Stone is, I believe he is the all-time assist leader in Michigan high school basketball history. And it also helps the fact that his dad is Lamonte Stone, who is one of Coach Monty's assistants. So I like those two freshmen. I definitely like them in the mix with the vets that are holding over for this season.
Yep, I do like them as well, and I do think that it's going to be intriguing to see what we see out of them all season long, and then I think that this team is one of very much intrigue as well, because for Fort Wayne, I thought that last year might be the year that they finally bust out, and I mean, they still had a solid year, but they fell short of their ultimate goal of making the NCAA tournament. Now they have to pick up the pieces, and they have to do so with DeAndre Craig coming on over from Denver, nice double-figure score. Team was really good at generating turnovers last year, really good at not turning the ball over themselves last year, but very, very rough down low. They don't have a lot of size on this roster, really, other than Maximus Nelson, and they're bringing in a freshman by the name of Abraham Kaba. You really don't have a lot of size with this team, and I think that for Fort Wayne, it's going to be, once again, can they get enough rebounding to help out that backcourt?
One of the things that may help Purdue Fort Wayne, and I'll be honest with you, I am terrible at trying to figure out where they're going to end up in the standings come to the end of the season, and I'm sure this is going to be the case this year too, but I don't know if this is going to help, but they're bringing in Darius Duffy, or Horizon Crime, because he's coming over from Milwaukee, and they're bringing in a kid from Israel, Yuval Levin, who's got about a year or so playing in Israel, and he's coming over as well. The other part is the backcourt, because they had the most experienced backcourt last year. There was no question about that. Losing Rasheed Bello and Jalen Jackson and Quentin Morton Robertson is killer, but they still have Chris Morgan. They still have Corey Hadnot. And they're bringing in, to your point, they bring in DeAndre Craig and also bringing in Ja'Cory Lipkins and Mikhail Stevenson. Hopefully, and I never underestimate what Coach Kaufman can do, they can outperform what my expectations of them are, which is kind of every other year for Purdue Fort Wayne, actually.
Yeah, with Purdue Fort Wayne, it seems like they either badly overachieve or underachieve. They never give you exactly what you're going to be expecting out of them. And then I think this team is going to be one of intrigue as well. That'd be Northern Kentucky, because they bring in Donovan Ode. He was on a terrible Fullerton team last season, but he was able to get the team double figures. And Dan, hopefully I get this last name correct, Gresinger, he was really good towards the back half of the year last year. Didn't play much towards the front half in those final 20 or so games with a double-figure score for the team. Along with LJ Wells, I feel like they've got a nice nucleus. I do have a little bit of question mark with the overall depth of this team, but if you could have Gresinger be able to pick up from where he left off a season ago, I think that there's upside here with Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, Northern Kentucky it was killer for them in the offseason. A lot of graduations, transfer portal hit. Sam Vincent didn't get an extra year eligibility, so big holes to fill. Dan Gresker, he was going to be in the portal, but he changed his mind, so he's back. And LJ Wells never really, this is going to be his team, really. So one of the things that Darren Horn has done over the years, and he's found a lot of success with this, is looking in the non-D1 ranks. He found Dan Gresker there. He found Josh Gilling there last year. What's one more? So Cale Robinson, Sean Nelson, and Tay Dozier, 3 non-D1 guys they're bringing in. You mentioned Donovan Ode. He's definitely going to be needed as one of those veteran presences. But yeah, to your point, the rest is kind of an unknown, really. It's going to be definitely Darren Horn's biggest challenge this year.
Yep, there certainly is a lot of unknown with this team, and I think that is going to be a lot of the fun of trying to be able to figure it all out, and it's going to be a lot of fun to figure out what we're going to be getting out of the team that represented this conference in the NCAA tournament last year. That'd be Robert Morris. They do lose quite a bit, like Alvaro Fargilius, he's out of the fold, but Nikolai Chikudis, hopefully you got that one correct, he comes on over from North Carolina A&T, 9+ rebound per game guy. They retained Deshaun Good, DJ Smith, Ryan Prather were nice ancillary pieces they're going to need to step up. And then they get a 9 Division I guy, Tazir Smith, and I'm actually very intrigued by as well. And I just think that Andy Toole in general has gotten things rocking and rolling. Took a little bit of time transferring on over from the NEC on over to the Horizon League, but it feels like they've been able to find their footing, and this was a team that did a nice job both hitting the glass and playing defense, which can't say for a lot of teams out there in the Horizon League.
It's funny because I think of all the people who loses people in the transfer portal, I think Andy Toole's the most used to it. So To your point, getting Tazir Smith is a good thing. He's got the two non-D1 guys, Albert Vargas and Cam Wilds, who are coming over. Deshaun Good, because with the coaching change, the primary benefactor from that is Robert Morris. Ryan Prather is definitely going to be the focal point since he is literally the only scholarship player left on this team from last year. One name that I'm very intrigued to see perform is Caleb Brown. Caleb Brown, he's bounced around a couple of places, one of them being Missouri. I'd like to see what he does in this setup with Andy Toole and his gang.
Yep, absolutely. I know that he was another guy that was from Fullerton as well. So lots of Fullerton guys going on over to the HoriZone League as well.
Yep.
And with Robert Morris, it is going to be a lot of fun to take a look at what we've got all there. And we've got ourselves 11 amazing teams out there in the HoriZone League. Obviously, it's been a little bit up and down the last few years, and that's why we love it. It's going to be an unpredictable league this year. Bob, I know you're doing an amazing job of covering everything out there in the Midwest, out there in the HoriZone League. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
All right. Well, you can find us basically across all social. You know what? Go to HoriZonRoundtable.com/subscribe. All of the links to all of our social sites are there. You can even sign up for our, you can sign up for emails. Once we publish our articles, they'll be getting to your inbox. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what we got going on. Summer's been kind of a lull, although we do have our off-season features. If you want to be go to patreon.com/HoriZonRoundtable. You can subscribe and read everything that all our great writers have produced over the summer.
Absolutely, and it is a very fun league in general. You're going to see a lot of teams bombing it from three-point range. IU Indy, what we're going to get out of them, I think, is anyone's guess, but that's why we love the HoriZone League, and that's why we love getting Bob aboard. So big thanks to Bob for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Beast and Family podcast. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you my projector of finish for the HoriZone League. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. This is the HoriZone League Conference Preview edition of the podcast, and it was great to be able to get Bob McDonald aboard, who does great work over at the HoriZone Roundtable, taking a look at everything that we've got with regards to HoriZone League, and does a great job of being able to follow this great game of college basketball. Really appreciate him jumping aboard, so big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you my projector finish for the HoriZone League. Now, because I am doing another conference preview edition, this means that I am going to be recapping the news and notes that we saw in college basketball over the last now 96 hours, because we've done back-to-back-to-back conference preview editions. We haven't missed too much with regards to the news and notes, if I'm going to call it what it is. But that said, anything that has been missed, have no fear. We're going to get that all polished up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But with regards to dead last, my projector or finish, I just don't know what to expect out of this IU Indy team, so I had to go with them at dead last. Now, I do think that IU Indy is going to have quite a bit of success with Mr. Howlett taking over from a West Liberty bunch that was averaging 100.2 points per contest and generating 19 steals per game. Like, just absolutely incredible what you saw there. And you got Kyler DiAgostino coming on over. I know that this was mentioned by our good friend Bob. He was averaging about 17.5 points per contest. Wasn't necessarily a team other than Cameron Tinsley, which I have to see if he's going to be coming on over or not. That is really going to be lighting it up from three-point range or not. But the fact that you do have Jackson Edwards coming in, I think is going to be rock solid. But this system is either going to be a big giant success or it's going to be a big giant flop. They had to make everything sort of change on the fly in late May, so that makes things very intriguing to say the least. And Tinsley, who was that good three-point shooter last season over at West Liberty, he is a part of the guys that come on over. Corey Boston, he comes on over from the non-Division I links. He should be able to give you a little bit of something as well. But I do take a look at things. Lots of question marks with them. They've got a nice freshman in Gabe Stewart who's going to be coming on over, gives his team 6'9" size, and they are going to be a team that's going to be giving you a different style. I just don't know if the defense is going to be there or not. You've got a lot of guys that are coming up from the non-D1 ranks up to the Division I level, and for Howlett, lots of success over there at West Liberty. I do feel like this might be a little bit of a rough year for IU Indy. So sight unseen, I go with IU Indy, number 11 in terms of my projector or finish, and number 10, we're going to be going with Detroit. They do bring back Orlando Lovejoy, who was Mr. Everything for the team last year. 16.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3.8 assists per contest, and as Bob mentioned, you had a lot of guys that were all sorts of banged up for this team, but they were also 341st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession possession basis on offense, 357th in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. They were okay from three-point range. Jared Larry is going to be back, 9 points, 4 boards. He shot 40% from three-point range. I like Nate Johnson, what he's able to bring to the table, 4.5 rebounds per game. Legend Geeter, he's going to need to Geeter done to be able to give you about 4 boards, mid-30s three-point shooter. And Ryan Kellenbay, if he's able to give you a nice clean bill of health, he was able to give you about 4 boards per contest. That's going to be rock solid as well. But I do take a look at this Detroit team under Coach Monty. I think that they're building things in the right way. TJ Nadeau is a guy that's able to give you a little bit of versatility at 6'5" as well. They bring in some freshmen like a Tyler Sprite, who I think might be able to give you a bit of something, but I've got my question marks with this Detroit team, even though if you look at the amount of returning minutes from seasons ago, they're one of the higher teams in this conference. I just think that the overall talent may not be there for Detroit right away. So I do have them at number 10 in my projector finish. Number 9, I'm going to be going with UW Green Bay. For UW Green Bay, I do think that Doug Gottlieb is going to be better as a coach this year than he was last year because, quite frankly, he couldn't have been much worse as a coach than he was 8 seasons ago. And you bring back quite a few guys from 8 seasons ago. Preston Rudinger, he was able to shoot about 37% from three-point range. He was back after he was able to give the team about 8 points, 3 assists, stealing after contest. And Marcus Hall, 14 points, 2.5 assists, nice three-point shooter as well. And I like the fact that they bring in LeBron Thomas, number 27 ranked junior college transfer according to JUCORecruiting.com. I know that Bob really mentioned Ramel Bethea, who was able to give the team 13 points per contest at Mary Costa College as well. Then you should be able to help elevate the team, but UW Green Bay last year killed on the glass, 355th in the country in terms of rebound percentage, 353rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I just don't know if that defense is going to be instilled with this UW Green Bay team. I've got lots of question marks with Doug Gottlieb. It's not easy to be both a radio show host along with a basketball coach. You're trying to do 2 jobs at the same time. I don't know if he's going to do either very amazing this year. So number 9 in my projector finish, that'd be UW Green Bay. At number 8, I'm going to be going with Wright State. As it was pointed out with our good friend and Bob, there is a lot of youth on the team, to say the least, with Wright State, and that is going to be hurting them quite a bit. They're going to be looking a lot to Logan Woods. Woods last year was relatively rock solid for the team at 6'9". He's able to put it up from three-point range. And Dominic Pangonis at 6'7". He's got some relatively nice versatility as well. I think that the big guy for this team is going to be Bryant Eteminu, who comes on over from Merrimack. He was the Metro Atlantic Defensive Player of the Year last year, 6 boards per contest. I think that he comes in and he really elevates a Wright State team that's had no defense whatsoever over the last few seasons. 2.3 blocks per contest. Now might be a little bit undersized for this league, but I think that he comes in right away, is able to be a little bit of a difference maker. Now, the problem is, it is going to be a case where he's probably not going to be able to give this team a ton of offense, so you're going to be looking to him to be able to elevate that aspect of his game a little bit more. But additionally, I do think that you're going to be able to get some strong contributions in the backcourt out of Solomon Callaghan, who was able to give you about 7 points per game. Shot 37% from 3. This was one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, so I do like that aspect of this Wright State team. For Wright State, you know that they're going to be going out there and they're going to be going buck wild from three-point range, and with Callaghan in conference play, he was shooting more around 42% from three-point range. So I do think that for Wright State, it's going to be a little bit of a step down, but they avoid the cellar. I've got them at number 8 in terms of my projector finish. And number 7, I'm going to be going Northern Kentucky. For Northern Kentucky, they did take a lot of losses in the offseason, and Donovan Ode, though he had nice numbers at Cal State Fullerton, that Fullerton team was terrible. 13 points and 5 rebounds per game, but Dan Gretzger, he was able to really elevate his game towards the back half of the season. For Gretzger, as a part-time starter last year, overall averaged about 7.5 points, shot 34% from three-point range, but how about averaging 16 points, 3 boards, 3.5 assists on 45% three-point shooting in the last 22 games of the year? LJ Wells coming back, giving this team 5.5 points per contest is solid. Now, this team, they were 338th in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but a top 50 team in terms of generating turnovers, not having Sam Vincent back, that's going to be hurting this Northern Kentucky team. And I do have a few question marks with regards to the overall depth of this team, but I do think that Darren Horn and company going to be able to do a good job of coaching these guys up. I think that they're going to be hovering in the middle of this conference. I've got Northern Kentucky at number 7 in terms of my projector finish. At number 6, I'm going to be going with Purdue Fort Wayne. With Fort Wayne 29th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage last year, and they were really good at generating turnovers. They were 11th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis overall when they were away from home. Top 25 team in terms of being able to maintain the ball. Corey Hadnot coming back, I think, is big. 39% three-point shooter, was able to give the team 9 points, a little bit over a steal per contest. And Maximus Nelson. He's at 6'8", able to shoot 40% for three. I like DeAndre Craig coming on over from Denver, a 13.5 point per game scorer. And Mikhail Stevenson, he comes on over from Grambling. Nice guy that I think is going to be able to help dole out the ball. 1.8 steals, 4 assists, 11 points per game. Not a great 3-point shooter, but I do think that the big issue for Fort Wayne, you really don't have anyone above 6'9" on the roster. You lose all of your top rebounders from a season ago, with Mulder and company being out of the fold. They were 353rd in the country in terms of rebound percentage, so that's going to be a little bit of an issue for you. But overall, I do take a look at this Fort Wayne team, and I do think that the backcourt is still going to be very stout and rock solid. So I do have Fort Wayne at number 6 in terms of my predictor finish. At number 5, I'm going to be going with Cleveland State. I know that Daniel Robinson leaving for North Texas and taking that job over there is rough, but Rob Summers was at Cleveland State when Dennis Gates was over there, and I know that he learned over at Missouri under Dennis Gates last few seasons. This is a team that's going to be bringing in Josiah Harris to be able to elevate things. He had a limited 8-game sample size over at Akron, but was averaging about 8.5 points, 5 boards, pair of assists per contest. He's able to be a little bit of a Mr. Everything sort of guy. And then Jadon Lipscomb, who was over at Florida National last season, he was able to 2 seasons ago shoot 36% from three. Lost season last year due to injury. This is a program that is really rolling the dice on a lot of guys that were banged up last season. Holden Pierre-Louis, he was unable to get out there on the floor over at Temple last season. I think that he and Dion Nasaya, who was over at George Washington last year, they come in, they see some immediate minutes. And then Foster Wonders, who was over at UW Green Bay last season, relatively good shooter, was able to give that Green Bay team right around 6 points per contest. I think that they're really going to elevate a Cleveland State team that I think that Rob Summers is a man that is going to be able to do a nice job with his job. Cleveland State has made some really nice coaching hires. Dennis Gates, Robinson, and now I think Summers. I have some belief in Cleveland State being able to rise up in this conference. So as a result, I've got Cleveland State currently at number 5 in terms of my projector or finish. At number 4, I'm going to be going with Oakland. With Oakland, I do think that the junior college guys are going to be rock solid. You've got 2 top 25 guys, according to JUCORecruiting.com, coming in. Isaac Garrett was ranked number 12. And then, hopefully I get this name correct, Coy Thurman, he was ranked number 22. And with Thurman, he was able to put up some relatively nice numbers over at Panola College, about 15 points per game. He doled out nearly 7 assists per contest. He figures to be the main point guard for the team of Garrett. He's a 6'8", 6'9", little bit of a jitterbug combo player. 7 boards, 14 points, a little bit over a block per contest over at Snow College last season. Then Brody Robinson was over at UT Arlington. I like what he's able to bring to the table. 40% 3-point shooter. Last year, this team was 330th in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. That should be able to help them out quite a bit. And then Marco Doyle, he went under the radar. He was, according to JUCORecruiting.com, the number 25 recruit in terms of this class. He shot 49.3% from 3-point range over at College of Southern Idaho. Was able to add in their 5 rebounds per game, so he's a little bit more than a one-trick pony guy. Michael Hoagie, who was over at Jacksonville State last year, 7.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. Now, depth is going to be an issue with Oakland, but we saw Oakland only go with like a 6-man rotation last year. I think that they're going to be just fine. They really slowed things down last season. I don't think that they're going to be quite as slow as last season. I don't think that they're going to be quite as up-tempo as they have been in the past as well. I think that with Greg Campy, because he has been around the block so many different times, he's going to know how to maneuver this team. I do think that he's going to put Oakland in a good position to be towards the top of the conference, even though pretty much everything other than Mr. Tabari Neverbrow, who he was able to give the team 6+ rebounds per game down low, is going to be gone. I do think that this is an Oakland team that is built to be able to have success in this conference. I do have them at number 4 in terms of my projector or finish. At number 3, I'm going to be going with UW Milwaukee. With UW Milwaukee, they do lose one of the top rebounders in all of college basketball, and JaMychal Stillwell, but Danilo Janovic returns after he, at 6'8", was able to get the team right around about 3.5 rebounds per game, was limited due to injury. You've got John Lovelace, who was able to shoot about 37% from 3 off the bench, but Seth Hubbard, he was a baller over at Toledo, who was able to give you 8.5 points per contest. 2 seasons ago, over at Western Michigan, was one of their main men, 14 points, steal per contest. They do lose Caleb Blackwell, so that's going to be hurting them a little bit. But Aaron Franklin, he's a nice little mixer and shaker. And Chandler Jackson, who was over at Florida State last season, pair of assists, a little bit over a steal, 6.5 points per game. He's going to be able to add some character to this backcourt. I do think that for UW Milwaukee, they've done a nice job of being able to scope out some non-Division I guys. They're going to be able to do a nice job of being able to elevate this team right away. With UW Milwaukee, I do think that Tate McKenzie at 6'10" is going to be able to give you some relatively good size. They're going to be relying upon quite a few freshmen, including MJ Stackhouse. Yep, that last name was Stackhouse, but that said, I do take a look at UW Green Bay. I think that they're once again going to be well coached under Bart Lundy, and I just don't doubt this guy. So I've got UW Milwaukee at number 3 in terms of my projector or finish. At number 2, I'm going to be going with Youngstown State. With Youngstown State, even though they do lose quite a few of those heart and soul pieces from a season ago. You saw a solid backcourt with Jason Nelson, Bryson Dawkins. Dawkins was a 14-plus point per game scorer over at Houston Christian last year. Not necessarily the most amazing three-point shooter in the world, but for Youngstown State, they should be much better from three-point range than a season ago with Vladimir Saldariste, who was able to give you 11 points, about 8 boards over at UT Martin last season. He also averaged 2 steals per game while shooting 36% from three-point range. Good versatility. Chris Carroll was pointed out by Mr. Bob. He was able to shoot 35.8% from three-point range for the team last year, 5 boards, 9 points, a steal per contest, and when it comes down to Andrew King being over at Elon last year, he was able to give them 3.5 assists per game. He should be able to help out Jason Nelson in the backcourt as well. I really do like the overall pieces that you've got in this backcourt, and you still have a true 7-footer for this team as you've got the international man of history and Emmanuel Zugval, who comes on over. He was within the conference last year. He should be able to give this team a bit of something. He's certainly not going to be Gabe Nines, but you know what? There's not going to be too big of a fall off, and then Rontavious Blackshear should be able to give you some nice versatility at 6'6" as well. So do think that Youngstown State remains rock solid. I've got them at number 2 in my projector finish. And at number 1, I do go with Robert Morris, with Ryan Prather being a guy that I think can really take a step up for this team this season. With Mr. Prather last season, he was a nice ancillary piece for this team. He was able to shoot 44.5% from three-point range, 8 points, a little bit over 3 assists per game. They're going to need him to facilitate a little bit more, but having Deshaun Good come in from IU Indy at 6'8", he was able to grab 6 boards, shot 36% from 3. That's going to be able to help them out. I like Caleb Brown in his game, a little bit over 3 boards over at Fullerton last season, and Jeremiah Littlejohn, comes on over from West Oklahoma State. He was at the junior college level, able to average 4 assists, 2 steals, shot 40% from three-point range. This team was rock solid on glass last season, 35th in terms of rebound percentage. And with this team as well, they do pick up a 7'2" big man as well. That should be able to help out things as well, as you've got Ogbong Okon, who was able to give about 4 rebounds per game last season over at Alabama State. Guy is an absolute just tower at 7'1". Recognize they didn't necessarily have the world's greatest amount of production last season, but was able to see quite a few stars. That should be able to help this team maintain some toughness down low. Andy Toole, he is so good at being able to maneuver the transfer portal, and I do think that he's going to be able to do a good job with these pieces once again and find a way to be able to get Robert Morris back to the top of the conference. So I do have Robert Morris at number 1 in terms of my projector or finish, and that will wrap things up for the HoriZone League Conference Preview Edition right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry ZM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Bob McDonald, who does great work over at HoriZone Table. He joined me in the last segment, coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.